in the way that they are, like going from 190 to 177 and making us feel that way is kind of a play on our emotions,
Yeah.
and with something that we need anyway. So we do what we have to do, but either way, we're kind of stuck.
I mean, I'm like everybody else. I like lower prices, but I'm willing to pay for the improvement in the environment.
Yesterday it was 190, something like that. And then today is 170, 75, 77, or something like that, which is good.
Yeah. So as a driver, are these cost savings significant to you?
Yeah, lots of change, like every single day, so it's a big change.
Those were motorists in Vancouver speaking this morning to CBC's Jessica Chung. And yes, BC's consumer carbon tax is dead when it comes to today. MLAs, though, finally voted at around 1:30 this morning to axe the tax. This was after a marathon legislative session. The 17-cent per litre carbon tax on the price of gas is gone. And BC was the first province to implement a carbon pricing scheme way back under Gordon Campbell in 2008. And we're only able to pull the tax after the federal Liberals lifted the requirement for provinces to have carbon pricing. Okay, so we're asking you, are you seeing a price difference at the pump today? How will the end of the carbon tax affect your day-to-day finances? Give us a call, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone or email bctoday@cbc.ca. Joining me first is Ross Hickey. He's an economist at UBC's Okanagan campus. Hi, good afternoon, Professor Hickey.
Good afternoon.
So should we be seeing a price difference today?
Yeah, it makes sense. I think that the absence of this tax has given these retailers an opportunity to sell their gasoline at a lower price.
So what do you make of people saying, you know what, over the last couple of weeks, I've seen it go up to 190. Okay, it went down to 170, 178. I saw 177 this morning, not really seeing a huge amount of savings.
Yeah, so, it's there are local markets for gasoline. Different municipalities have different average prices, and the price fluctuates a lot. Yeah, it's a very studied market, and if you want to keep track in your own community on what the price of gas looks like today, gasbuddy.com is a good place to look. It shows gas prices that are reported by individuals all over the province. And like any reduction that's introduced because of the elimination of the carbon tax is likely to be short-lived. We're going to switch over from the winter mix to the summer mix of gasolines soon, and when we do that changeover, we usually expect the price to go up by about 10 to 15 cents. I've seen a 10-cent reduction at the local station that I drove by last night and then drove by this morning. I don't expect that 10% reduction to last long, but this is an opportunity for these retailers to lower their prices. They know everyone's going to lower their price. It's an opportunity for each retailer to say, I'm going to lower my price and try to capture a little bit more of the market today. But it's a day-to-day pricing that these retailers do.
So why do you say it will be short-lived?
Well, because the price of the demand for gasoline is quite inelastic. And so it's likely the case that these retailers are going to find that they can make a little bit more profit if they increase their price a little bit more over the longer term. So we see this initial reduction, but I expect that we're going to see it ratchet back up a little bit. I say that because I don't believe that the consumer was bearing all the burden of this tax in the first place, right? So retailers took a little bit on the chin from the consumer carbon tax as well. Not all of the burden of the tax was passed forward to the consumers. So I wouldn't expect that the full carbon tax elimination is going to be enjoyed entirely by the consumer in this market.
In the end, do you think it was a smart move?
No, it was foolish. I mean, I was hoping it would be an April Fool's joke, to be honest, but it turns out it wasn't. It's a foolish move. I think that this is an example of some political pundits' belief in politics steering policy, telling us what is and is not possible or feasible. The fact is, we had this tax since 2008. It weathered a lot of political storms. It was doing a good thing of helping consumers in British Columbia move towards more environmentally friendly habits. A lot of heat pumps were purchased, a lot of electric vehicles, a lot of new windows, and now what we're going to do is we're going to throw away a great tax that was going to help future generations, all because of a slogan, "Axe the tax." I honestly, it's pathetic.
How do you respond then to, that Axe the Tax slogan has been around from the federal Conservatives for a while now, for months and months. But they would argue there are real concerns about affordability that underlie that slogan.
Yeah, so I'll tell you, slogans are great for catching attention, but here's a slogan for people to keep in mind. This is a good economic slogan I heard from Kevin Milligan, a professor at UBC. It's never try to solve an income problem with prices, right? This is not a price problem. Affordability is about incomes. Affordability is not about prices. The carbon price, the carbon tax that had an effect on prices of carbon-intensive products, that was not making affordability worse. The average Canadian was made better off because of the rebates that were associated with the carbon tax. You know who paid a lot of the carbon tax? People who live in bigger homes, right? People who live in bigger homes that heat the entire house to be the same temperature throughout. Those are the people who bore the most burden of the carbon tax. Jennifer Winter, Kent Fellows, and another co-author, his name escapes me at the moment, but they studied this and won an award from the Canadian Economics Association for studying who actually bears the incidence of the carbon tax in Canada. And their paper shows pretty clear that it's higher income households that bore the most of the burden of the carbon tax, that lower income households, even though when you're a low income household member and you go to the gas station, you pay a little more at the pump every time you go fill up. But guess what? The rebates you were getting back actually exceeded the amount of carbon tax you paid. That's reality. Okay, that's not a slogan, that's reality. But again, slogans seem to catch on and people, I think, get captured by them. I hope that the slogan of never try to solve an income problem with prices will catch on, because that's a reality we need to embrace.
Okay, that's my guest, Ross Hickey, UBC economist. He's joining us from the Okanagan campus. What do you think? What are the prices that you're seeing at the pump today? Do you think that this removal of the carbon tax will make a difference to affordability? And as you heard, he expects that change, that price change, will be short-lived given demand. Give us a call, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. You can email to bctoday@cbc.ca. Let's take some of your calls now. Lynn is on the line in Victoria. Hi, Lynn. Are you thinking this will make a difference to gas prices?
Hi, Michelle. Welcome home.
Thank you.
I am not excited or pleased about this axe the tax, a very Poilievre move by our weak Premier Eby. To me, I concur with your guest. There's a $1.5 billion shortfall in the BC budget. How is that going to affect programs that we need, services that we need? No, I am actually embarrassed by Premier Eby, and my vote doesn't go to Eby anymore. It goes to the Greens, because I believe they believe what's right in keeping this tax. So no, I'm not happy at all.
Lynn, thank you for the call. And we do know that the two Green MLAs, Jeremy Valeriot and Rob Botterill, were the two who voted against the carbon tax elimination. And their concerns were around that budget gap that would be left by the loss of revenue that would be left by the carbon tax. And they were looking for a plan to address climate change without the carbon tax. Lynn, thank you for the call. Dan is on the line now in Trail. Hi, Dan. Do you think this is going to affect the price at the pump?
I do, and thank you very much for having me on.
Sure.
I understand, but I hear from the lady before. I heard from the guy before that, $1 billion that the government's going to lose or something. But like they said, $1 billion of money that they didn't have before. And what really gets me is when I hear them say, carbon tax is good for good for the world and make a greener good. How do we make a greener good if we're the only place in the world, Canada is the only place in the world paying a carbon tax? Let everybody else pay a carbon tax, and then Canada wouldn't say, well, why? Okay, we're paying more taxes. We're paying more and more taxes to live. We have to stop the tax. We have to be able to say, we're not the most tax place in the world.
So to you, this is going to make a difference with affordability?
100%. Like 17 cents doesn't sound like a lot, but when I put $20 in my tank, I can go to work for 2 days instead of $20, and I get 1 day to travel back and forth to work. It's going to save me money to afford my food. And not only that, carbon tax. So now the stores can't say, oh, we have to pay more for fuel for trucking. They can come down on their prices because the carbon tax is not there. They're going to pay less for fuel. Therefore, groceries and everything should drop. It's just not gas. Groceries should drop because they don't pay so much for fuel to truck it.
That's an interesting point. Dan, thank you so much. Glad to hear from you in Trail. That's Dan calling us. And let's ask our guest, Ross Hickey, today it's not just BC's carbon tax, it's the federal carbon tax as well. And that was a deadline that the BC government was trying to meet. So the federal Liberals also removing the consumer carbon tax. Are there other jurisdictions that have a carbon pricing scheme?
Yeah, there are other jurisdictions that have carbon pricing. It's not typically facing the consumer. A lot more of these are producer carbon prices. But I mean, this gets to the into the details of it, which I'm glad that we are. We have to ask ourselves, when we are abandoning the consumer carbon tax, are we abandoning our ambitions to reach our reductions in greenhouse gas emissions that we have established through the Paris Climate Change Agreement? No, none of these politicians who are axing the tax are saying that we're now going to increase emissions. What they're going to do is they're going to use regulations and other means to try to reduce carbon emissions. That is going to be more costly to all Canadians than the carbon tax. It's not that economists love taxes, it's that we appreciate that the carbon tax was the best way to try to reduce greenhouse gas emissions while maximizing choice for citizens within Canada. That being the choice being that I could choose whether I wanted to reduce my emissions by getting new windows for the house or barbecuing less or driving less. There's a number of things I could have done. But now what we're going to see is the government is going to have a heavier hand in trying to achieve those greenhouse gas emission reductions. And who knows how it's going to be achieved. My personal perspective and that of most economists is that the carbon tax, a consumer carbon tax, is the least cost way of trying to achieve our goals of reducing emissions.
But how effective has it been? Here in BC, having been in place since 2008, and we see emissions go up.
Emissions are going up. Yeah, you're right. So what's happened since 2008? Great point. We've increased the people in the province by a lot, right? We've increased economic growth by a lot. As I said before, who pays the majority of the carbon tax? People who live in bigger houses. We've had a lot more bigger houses. And yeah, people are using those means of heating their house, like natural gas, et cetera, and they're paying more carbon tax. So yeah, emissions are going up. But here's the thing. We've also seen a lot of people embrace choices that reduce their particular emissions. Like I said, people buying heat pumps, people buying electric vehicles. It's true that we have not kept pace. What was on deck, remember, before the Axe the Tax slogan caught on, what was on deck for the country at the federal level was an increase in carbon pricing at the federal level. And the province of British Columbia was going to follow suit because that was the law, okay? And that's where the anti-carbon tax rhetoric came about, the Axe the Tax, because people got all sad and confused and worried about, oh no, the price of gas is going to go up because we're going to increase the carbon tax. Again, the price of gas was going to go up. The average citizen in Canada was going to get more rebates back than they were going to pay in carbon tax. Okay? Now, every time they want to fill up, they're going to see a bigger bill because they're paying more carbon tax as we increase the carbon tax, but they're going to get bigger checks from the government. So again, the incidence of this tax was falling primarily on the high income earners in Canada. That's the reality of the situation.
Another email here now from James, who writes, how will the end of the carbon tax affect my finances? In the long run, it will cost me more. Climate change damage is causing home insurance prices to rise, and every municipality in BC is spending more to accommodate stronger storms, repair roads and highways, and fix other damage. Thank you very much, James, for that email. bctoday@cbc.ca. And let's go back to our callers now. Darius on the line in North Vancouver. Hi, Darius.
Hi, how are you?
I am fine. Thanks so much for calling. What are your thoughts? Is the carbon tax...
Thank you for giving me time to talk to you a little. Just one point before going to that. I just want to ask why only we have in the gas station only on cents. Don't we have any dollar? We cannot say $1.50, $1.70. Why we still going with the cents?
Okay.
This is the dictation by the
I'm not sure.
People.
Okay. What do you think? Are you seeing different prices today, Darius?
Yeah, but the prices of today, they increased last week the prices to 190 something. Mm-hmm. Which if you look at the price of crude oil, it was around less than $70. When it was $150, it was less than this price of today, But anyway, they increased first the prices, and then now they reduce it for us and give us this opportunity that we enjoy from this reduce of prices. That's not true. They think that we are stupid and we don't understand that.
Okay.
That's not good. And they want our vote for that one, 17 cents they reduced. First they increased, last few days they increased 17 or 20 more cents.
So where does that 17 cents, the 17 cents is less than what price? Darius, my apologies. I just think that's a good question to raise to Ross. We've heard from the BC government that there needs to be more transparency. They introduced this legislation to find out, what's behind gas prices at the retail level. And the Premier saying, we need to know, the people need to see a difference in price. So how much accountability does there need to be on the part of the retailers, the companies, when it comes to these prices then, and what's behind the volatility?
That's a good question. I mean, it's a perennial question, I'm afraid, because we look around and we see that when gas prices are high at one station, they're also high at other stations. Sometimes we think there's some kind of a conspiracy going on, but it's actually all the evidence suggests this is just market forces. That when the demand is high, prices go up, and they go up at a lot of these competing retail firms. There's been lots of government money paid to consultants trying to look for evidence of anti-competitive behavior in gas stations with their pricing of gasoline. I do not know of any research that's found very good evidence, with the exception of the odd pair of stores in the lower mainland of Vancouver about a decade and a half ago. But there's very few examples of where you see that there's actually anti-competitive behavior going on. And so I think we can spend a lot of our public funds on investigating that. I don't think it's money well spent at all.
Okay. As you say, it is a persistent observation or theory. Mm-hmm.
But there's no evidence. So as I say, it's persistent, but there's no evidence.
Okay. Really good to have you with us. Ross Hickey is my guest, economist at UBC Okanagan. He'll stick around for the next 10, 15 minutes or so as we continue to take your calls here on BC Today, asking you, it is the end of the consumer carbon tax. Are you seeing a difference in the price at the pump? What difference will this make for your finances? Again, our number is 1-800-825-5950. And yes, you have had a lot to say on the carbon tax cancellation. Here's some of your emails. Blake wrote us, I think it's insane to remove the carbon tax. We don't want our planet to burn down, yet we remove the carbon tax and send ICBC checks to car owners in the mail. If we want to address affordability, the solution would be to fund options other than cars. Daniel wrote us that this was yesterday. I found it interesting that all the gas stations in the Nanaimo area raised gas prices by 8 cents a liter. We were warned months ago that oil companies would absorb savings to consumers. By June, it'll be like the savings never existed and there will be no rebate checks. Chris writes, I'm very disappointed at the government's caving in to the reactionary Axe the Tax slogan. Carbon pricing was suggested by the scientists studying global warming and is an effective method of reducing fossil fuel burning. This is especially true when the proceeds are remitted to taxpayers, as was done with rebates. Honestly, the refusal on the part of so many people, especially the lack of leadership to deal with the climate crisis, is heartbreaking. Scott writes from Burnaby, costs are up, but let's be clear, the carbon tax has been a net benefit for most people. Polluters must pay or they won't stop polluting. Commuters forced back to the office are now spending the equivalent of a month's worth of groceries just to drive. There should be a tax credit for them, paid for by corporations. Let's stop punishing people and start making polluters pay. Tim writes, isn't this just a capitulation to the Conservatives? This is not leadership. It goes against any logical fight against climate change. BC is now in line with other head-in-the-sand regimes around the world. This is a sad day for our youth. So all those emails that we found yesterday, all sad or upset about the end of the carbon tax. BC Today at cbc.ca to send your opinion. Thanks for joining us here on BC Today. We are live on Radio 1, CBC Television, live streaming as well on the CBC News app. You can catch us on YouTube as well. Just search for CBC British Columbia. And we will continue our discussion on the end of the consumer carbon tax. Take more of your calls. Mike in Vancouver, James in Spence's Bridge, and B in Prince George. We'll go to you right after the CBC News update, and as well, our guest, Ross Hickey, UBC Okanagan economist. More on the carbon tax coming up after the CBC News update, and here now is Rob Zimmerman.
Good afternoon. People in the Lillooet area will need to deal with another emergency department closure at their hospital today. Staffing issues mean emergency services will be unavailable until 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. Patients needing emergency care are told to travel elsewhere or call 911. This is the 10th closure of the emergency department in Lillooet this year. As we've been hearing on the show, the provincial government has approved a bill to eliminate the consumer carbon tax. Came after several hours of debate last night and into this morning. Gas prices are expected to fall by about 17 cents a litre. And Vancouver Park Board commissioners have voted to approve a 25-metre pool at the Aquatic Centre instead of a 50-metre pool as part of the renovation to the 51-year-old facility. Park Board staff said to build the 50-metre pool, they need more funding. The renovation is set to begin at the end of next year and go until 2029. And now the forecast on the north coast, clearing this afternoon with a high of 10. Highs around +1 with a chance of flurries in the Peace. In the central interior, including Prince George, a chance of showers with a high of 7. Highs up to 11 with a chance of showers and thunderstorms in the Kootenays. In the southern interior, including Kelowna, mainly cloudy with a high of 10. And for Metro Vancouver, Greater Victoria and the Fraser Valley, a mix of sun and cloud this afternoon with highs up to 12 degrees. That's your CBC News update from Vancouver.
Thank you very much, Rob. That's Rob Zimmerman in the CBC Vancouver newsroom. And we are continuing our discussion on the end of the consumer carbon tax. And as you heard, after long debate, the legislation to essentially de facto get rid of the carbon tax on consumers was passed early this morning, late last night. And we're taking your calls, asking you, are you seeing a difference at the price at the pump? Give us a call, 1-800-825-5950. My guest is Ross Hickey, UBC Okanagan economist. And we have Mike on the line in Vancouver. Hi, Mike. What are your thoughts on the prices?
Oh, hi. Thanks. Well, I haven't checked at the pumps yet, but I did a quick calculation. I use about 120 liters a month gas. If that 17 cents comes off, it'll save me around $20 a month. But I yesterday got my home heating bill with natural gas, and I usually don't look at it because it's paid automatically to my bank. I looked at the items. My monthly bill is $115. The carbon tax was $44.64. That's 39% of that $115 bill is carbon tax. I was frankly stunned. I phoned natural gas. She confirmed it, of course, and said that yes, that would come off completely if they passed that legislation. But that's a lot of money off $115 for carbon tax, and frankly, I don't think about saving the planet when I look at that number. It's way more than the gas I'm going to save at the money I'm going to save at the pump. And you can't turn your house heating off. I don't have to drive as much, but I'm not going to start wearing all my clothing and turn my heat off. It's outrageous. That I didn't realize that was the amount of money coming off for carbon tax. I wonder how many other people don't know that either. Do you?
Well, you know what? That's an interesting point that you raise, Mike, because, yes, we did hear from the province that approximately 15 cents per cubic meter for natural gas will be removed.
I don't do it by cubic meter. I looked at literally $115.
Sure, you're looking at the bill in front of you, yeah.
That's. I wish I hadn't looked at it. No, really. That and how much of the planet gets saved by that, because we get dinged for that whole. I don't want to get into the politics of that, but for every household to get dinged 39% on their heating bill, big house, small house. This is a small house, by the way. It's a really small house. And 39%. Anyways, I'll let it go at that. Mike, I have to blow off some steam on that one.
I'm really glad you called. Thank you very much. And I can see Ross Hickey nodding as he's listening to you. Yeah, go ahead, Ross.
I feel very bad. This is a tragedy right now when I hear that, because it's too bad that he didn't look at the bill, Mike, in 2008. Right, 2009, when we first introduced this carbon tax, and you would have seen that that a lot of carbon tax is there on that bill. And if you have a small home, you probably could have serviced the home with heat with a heat pump, and you could have made that investment, and you could be saving money, right? Because it could be more efficient, in fact, to use that to heat your home, or made other efficiency improvements in your home to reduce the carbon tax you pay. I mean, that was the idea with the carbon tax, is that we would have this tax that would make the consumption of fossil fuel intensive goods and services more expensive, encouraging consumers to switch towards less emission-intensive forms of consumption. And so obviously we haven't been doing a good job of communicating that. The bills, frankly, should have been highlighting how much was consumer carbon tax to encourage people to switch. But of course, why would a gas company want someone to switch to a heat pump? That's where the province's responsibility was laying.
James in Spence's Bridge. Yes, your thoughts on the end of the carbon tax and what difference that makes to prices?
I was in Calgary before the election call, and Mark Carney had announced the carbon tax would be eliminated, and gasoline prices went up 10 cents a liter as soon as he made that announcement. What I figure is the companies might give us a discount in the short term, but in the long term, they will jack up the prices because they know what the consumers will pay at the pump.
Okay. James, thank you very much. And again, I'm sorry to jump in. It's just this is something that that Ross did talk about earlier as well, in terms of these are market forces, is what you said, Ross.
Yeah.
Okay. I apologize for jumping in, James. Mike is on the line in Victoria now. I just want to get through our callers as well. Hi, Mike.
Hi. I just filled my truck up because it's like 161.
In Victoria.
There's a big, in Victoria.
Okay.
But I think the bigger question is like the taxation. Like, I don't feel like we have enough taxes because we need so many things. I need a doctor. My kid doesn't have a doctor. We need the current this morning. We need guns and bullets and bombs and jets.
Military spending.
It looks like we're taxing ourselves wrongly, and as far as I'm concerned. And that's all I got to say about that.
Okay. Good to hear from you as well, Mike. Thank you for the call. And our last caller on this today is B in Prince George. Hi, B.
Hi, I just want to build on what the last caller just said. I don't feel like we're being taxed enough. I did some quick math. I am saving $8 per tank with the price change that I just saw in Prince George, down almost 20 cents. And that is equivalent on my 2004 vehicle to 1.6 cents per kilometer that I drive. So it's really marginal, especially considering in Vancouver, you're paying $3.50 for a whole bus transit. So in fact, there was a caller earlier was talking about rural and how much further you have to drive. But what if carbon tax was centered on these urban centers that don't need vehicles as much as other places?
So more regional.
Exactly, because I'm choosing to drive, and with making that choice, I should be able to pay a bit more for that. So tax more, get better transit systems in place.
Okay,
and give people more options.
B, thank you so much for the call from Prince George. I'm going to squeeze in Val in Vernon now. Hi, Val. Your thoughts on the end of the carbon tax and the price at the pump?
I totally agree with the expert on this. He is so bang on, and I actually wish this had been talked about way back when this was first put in place, because obviously people weren't looking at their bills. This, for me, has been a great way to even reduce my emissions a little bit more and to feel I'm part of a larger society. And I have no problems paying taxes. I feel that's the investment we make in a civic society.
Val, thank you for the call, and we'll wrap it up there. Ross, thank you so much for joining us. Any last final comment you'd like to leave us with?
Well, it don't rhyme like axe the tax, but I just hope we have an appreciation for appropriate taxation in this province.
Ross, good
maybe
to
maybe I can catch on.
There you go. Okay, thanks so much for speaking with us today. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
That's Ross Hickey, UBC Okanagan economist. It is now 12:39. This is BC Today. And thanks for joining us here on CBC Radio 1, as well as on live stream and on CBC Television. We have lots more coming up on the day's top stories, including the carbon tax in your region. And in Metro Vancouver, On the Coast is exploring some of those rough waters. Here's Gloria Makarenko.
Hi there, Michelle. It's Gloria Makarenko here, inviting you to join us for On the Coast this afternoon. We're going to meet the filmmakers from BC and from the Lummi Reserve in Washington State, who set out to make a film about the last living southern resident killer whale in captivity. It was an orca named Lolita, who had been captured in Puget Sound in 1970. Lolita spent more than half a century at the Miami Seaquarium. Well, their documentary, Resident Orca, screens tonight at the VIF Center. And 10 days on the campaign trail. We're going to hear from Rob Russo, who's Canada's correspondent with The Economist, about what stands out from the leaders this week, the platforms they're highlighting, and how their messages are resonating with voters. That's On the Coast between 3 and 6 this afternoon. Join us.
We sure will, Gloria. Thank you very much. That's Gloria Makarenko, host of On the Coast. You can hear her on CBC Radio 1 in Metro Vancouver, and of course your local afternoon show wherever you are in the province. Just use the CBC News app or listen on CBC Radio 1. Thanks for joining us here on BC Today. I'm Michelle Elliott. Well, it is the most common cancer diagnosed among young men between the ages of 15 and 40, but it's not often talked about. April is Testicular Cancer Awareness Month, and the Movember campaign is encouraging men to, quote, know thy nuts and do regular checks. Okay, we're going to hear more about the cheeky language and why that's important and trying to reduce the stigma around this. I have two guests joining us now. Charlie Arden Brown is a cancer survivor and joins me here in studio. And Dr. Mike Fraser is with Movember Canada. Good afternoon to you both. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks so much for having me.
Very good to have you both. Dr. Fraser, it's not well known. It's not well known among young men who are the most affected. And I guess it's hard to talk about, and understandably so.
Absolutely. It's something that, when I was 15 years old, I wasn't thinking about testicular cancer. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Even older men have trouble thinking about their own health, and let alone younger men and boys. But it's so important. We know that 75% of people in this age group between 50 and 40 don't actually know that the most common cancer in their age group is testicular cancer. And there's some other really alarming statistics around, like the impetus for people to go to the doctor and get checked. We need to raise that awareness, because it's a disease that's super highly curable if it's detected early, and we need to encourage younger men to get themselves checked out.
Charlie, I imagine was this something you knew anything about when you were diagnosed?
No, not at all. I was definitely one of those statistics that just didn't check or think about it at all until it really became an issue. Easily fell into the trap of just thinking that I was young and healthy and it would pass, but obviously it didn't. And like you said, very curable. The start to finish was kind of less than 3.5 weeks for me. So super easy to treat and cure. It's a funny one.
Well, I can imagine that, that is such wonderful news that it was such a short treatment period. Why do you feel it's important to be talking about this?
I think because of how treatable it is when it's caught early is what I've been told by my surgeon and kind of all the professionals that I spoke to. It's the most common form of cancer in men my age, and I didn't know about it, which kind of blew my mind a little bit and annoyed me that I didn't know a little bit.
Why did it annoy you?
Well, it affects me the most, It's to not be aware of something that affects me or could affect me or my friends. All my friends are men under the age of 30, and none of us have ever spoken about it until something kind of drastic like being diagnosed with it happens. So speaking about it, I know it's a funny subject to broach, talking about your nuts to friends or family, but it's your body. You've got to look after yourself. You can't just sort of push it away. Because I was definitely in that camp until it became an issue, and if more guys can talk about it and be aware of themselves, then the better and easier it'll be.
That's just it, isn't it? When I think about the effort that's gone into destigmatizing, breast cancer self-checks and getting mammograms and really putting that into the conversation, what does need to happen to remove that stigma and make this a more comfortable discussion and open discussion, because people need to know. Dr. Fraser.
I think, hopefully campaigns like ours, where we take a little bit of a bit of an irreverent, cheeky look at the issue, right, and kind of make it not so scary to talk about.
Yeah.
I think there is a general issue, and it's not just around testicular cancer; it's around men's health in general, and that is men are generally speaking not as good at taking care of themselves as women are. I include myself very much in that basket. But I think that, it's so important, because when we start early, when we start having these conversations with people as they're, getting into their adolescence and their young adulthood, we not only destigmatize testicular cancer, but we destigmatize talking about health in general, right? Whether it's cancer, whether it's mental health, whether it's, all kinds of different things. Having those discussions should be normal, and it should be easy, and some of them are not, they're difficult conversations to have, but going out and taking an active stand and advocating for yourself shouldn't be abnormal. It should be the norm, and we want to get to that state.
That irreverence, Charlie, does that help? Being able to talk to men your age, under 30, to be able to just say, know your nuts, know thy nuts. It's a kind of a way to ease into it in a lighthearted manner, I suppose.
Definitely. I mean, you can't dance around it. We've all got a pair of nuts, and all have a a duty to kind of look after yourselves. And if you can chat about it in a bit of a more relaxed environment, and this campaign kind of does that, I think.
Yeah. I wonder too, we live in an age of health misinformation, and I guess, does that leave young men more prone to that disinformation and misinformation if there's not enough access and ease of openness with actual health professionals when it comes to their health? Yeah, I don't know if you want to answer that, Dr. Fraser.
Yeah, I can jump into that. I think you're absolutely right. I mean, this is it so happens that this age group we're talking about are the ones that probably are the most vulnerable to this type of misinformation that's out there, and
they're most targeted, aren't
combating that. Yeah, exactly. And combating that misinformation is very difficult. Misinformation spreads a lot more quickly than the truth. And but in this case, I think campaigns like ours, campaigns like other organizations have done around this cancer and other cancers, you mentioned breast cancer, that's a great success story of advocacy, public advocacy, and getting people to destigmatize. I think that the more conversations we have, the more that we make this just a thing that we talk about. It's just part of our society. It's something that people talk about. The less prone people are to be thrown off by things that are just manifestly false that is out there.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on that? Being, I guess, bombarded with misinformation and how to make your way through that?
Yeah, well, I actually found almost the opposite for especially the information that Know Thy Nuts and Movember have out there. I think Googling any sort of ailment is a big red flag. You can always find the worst information, but in this case, it actually really kind of helped settle any nerves I had. The information and sources and success stories that they had on there, watching videos of other young guys that had been through it and come out the other side kind of better or as they were before. That kind of really resonated with me and is kind of why I'm doing this now, to kind of add to it. But that was, I know what you mean. You can get lost in the misinformation, but this is great stuff that they've got on there, and it's a good nerve settler when you get given such kind of rattling news.
Yeah, I can imagine. So what is the approach that you think helps? When you're talking with your friends, what is the type of communication that would be most effective, do you think?
Well, at the moment, I'm kind of throwing it down my friends' throats in terms of
Good for you.
I've got a small Instagram page called Nuts Running, and it's just me getting back to fitness, but it gives me an outlet to speak about your own physical health and link that to testicular cancer. You go for a long run, you get in a hot shower, and you check yourself. It's kind of as easy as that. And it's not one person is the same. You need to know your nuts rather than someone else's, not that you would, but it's for figuring out what feels normal and then working out where the irregularities pop up. That's kind of what I'm doing at the moment. So for the awareness campaign, I'm going to be running 10K every day, vlogging it and using that as an outlet to deliver any facts, stats, or a bit of myth busting around the topic. What's been the response? It's been great. It's Movember have been super supportive and are helping no end. So it's only a small page, but it's kind of not there for sort of clickbait and views. If it's going to 200 of the right people, then that's kind of what it's there for.
Wow. All right. Well, let's talk about the information people need to know. You touched on it a little bit, Charlie, but Dr. Fraser, what are the things that men need to know in order to be able to check themselves and watch out for things that may not be right?
Right. So I can't agree enough with what Charlie just said. Absolutely, the important thing is to know what's normal for you, and that's why it's important to do these kinds of self-examinations multiple times over time, so that you can establish this is what feels normal on the left and the right. There are perfectly normal things that happen over time. that are different between all of our different physiologies. When you're feeling your testicle, you may feel some irregularities. That's not necessarily anything to be worried about. Where you need to start to be concerned and to take action is when you start to notice differences, things that are changing. So that's absolutely critical. As Charlie said, it's really super simple. You get a nice hot steamy shower going, you get everything nice and loosened up, you feel around between your thumb and your first two fingers, feel for any irregularities, do the same on the other side. So steam, roll, repeat. That's the kind of simple mantra that we like to espouse. If you do feel something that's irregular to you, something you say, hey, I wonder what that is, absolutely contact your doctor. Just make an appointment and say, this happened, or this is something I felt. Is there anything to be concerned about there? As I said, a lot of the time there's nothing. It's just normal changes. But on the off chance that it is, you've taken action and you're being proactive about your health, and that's just so important. I think the other thing to remember is that if it is cancer, number one, it's highly treatable, as we've been talking about.
Yeah.
But number two is that in the vast majority of cases, the impact on the rest of your life doesn't have to be tremendously altering. You're going to be living for 70, 80 years as a cancer survivor. So there are obviously, psychological issues that come with that and physical issues that may come with that. But fertility can be maintained. There are, all kinds of things that you can do if you feel self-conscious about if you have a testicle removed, maybe that you feel like there's a cosmetic issue there, that can be dealt with. There are ways around those things. So don't be scared just because you're afraid of the unknown. It's always better to tackle these things head on, and then there are ways around some of these issues in the vast majority of cases.
How do you get over that fear of bringing it up with a loved one or with a doctor?
I most struggled telling my parents, to be honest, because they're back home in the UK. So that was always a tricky one. So I just went in with that with as much of the facts as I could have. Telling loved ones, again, is like my girlfriend, my partner who's out here with me has been incredibly supportive, because it's kind of as much her news as it is mine. We're kind of going through it together. But I think the first trip to the doctors is kind of the first hurdle, and once you've gone through that, I think for me anyway, the next few steps kind of dominoed, really. It was just that.
Take that first step. That's so important. And Dr. Fraser, what can girlfriends and partners and family members do to support their loved one?
I think the first and foremost thing is to make sure that monthly screening is going on, that you're actually doing your self-examinations. We see this in other healthcare issues around men, and that is that sometimes nagging works. Let's make sure that if it comes to that, and you have to be told repeatedly to go and do this, hopefully it doesn't come to that. But I think we're talking about your health, and we're talking about something that doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to threaten your life at all.
Yeah.
But it's very, very important that you kind of do the proactive steps. And frankly, they're pretty, as these things go, they're pretty minor steps to take, right? We're not talking about a cancer that's inside your body and you can't see it and you kind of don't know what you're looking for. Like, this is, you can feel it.
Yeah.
And so it's important that we just encourage those people. So I think partners have an absolutely critical role to play. Again, not just around testicular cancer or around healthcare in general, but specifically on this issue. It's, it just should be something that's like, hey, did you do your check this month? Oh yeah, okay, I'll go and do it. But yeah, super, super important. And again, not just in the screening part, but afterwards as well, right? Like all of the psychological pressures that Charlie's talking about here, right? To have someone with you that can help you through that process it's invaluable. Yeah, it's so important.
This is an important conversation, and I really appreciate both of you. The really crucial information's been shared today. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Charlie Arden Brown is a cancer survivor, and Dr. Mike Fraser is with Movember Canada. April is Testicular Cancer Awareness Month. You can go to the Movember website to find out more about their campaign. Now, before we wrap up, if you've been out and about, you've probably seen the bursts of pink. Yes, it is cherry blossom season. I love it. It's my favorite. What a treat. We'd love for you to send us your photos of cherry blossoms. Email them to bctoday@cbc.ca. You can write up a description or record a voice memo. Send that along too. We'll post them on Friday, and you can win a BC Today prize pack. Your cherry blossom photos, send them to us, bctoday@cbc.ca.